Time now for a ride on the current reigning world champ when it comes to all-out top speed, the Suzuki GSX1300R Hayabusa. How fast is fast? Well, let's just say you could theoretically break any Canadian speed limit with ease in first gear alone. Remember, you still have 5 more gears on tap. At the heart of this cruise missile is a liquid-cooled, fuel-injected 16-valve, 1,298cc inline 4. Underneath the bulbous bodywork, there's a very beefy twin-spar aluminum chassis sporting fully adjustable suspension bits front and rear, accessorized with 17-inch radial tires and triple disc brakes. As for creature comforts, up front in the faux carbon fiber cockpit you'll find a trick set of instruments that sweep themselves on ignition, a digital clock and digital odometer with dual trip meters. So what's it like to spend a weekend on the road with the king of speed? Well, we invited Toronto Sun columnist Scott Magnish and MMIC riding instructor Nick Shmurnu to sample the Hayabusa, and here's what they had to say after hanging with the king.
It's the fastest, the nicest, best handling Suzuki I've ever been on, and anybody who had a chance to ride it or compare it to any of the other Suzukis would agree it's a really sweet motorcycle. Not a pure sports bike because it's, I think, a bit on the big side, a bit on the heavy side, but just an amazing bike if you're touring, if you're looking for just a lot of power. Beautiful motorcycle. It's an inline 4. It's fuel injected. Got a chance to peek at some dyno figures on this bike. The fact Suzuki claims 175 horses at the crank. The dyno stats that I saw in this particular vehicle was 155 at the rear wheel, which figures out about right. And it's an incredible amount of power that's being generated there. You see a lot of the things that Suzuki's developed in other motorcycles. The air scoops in the front of the fairing that bring the air back in to help the engine breathe. Dual exhaust, which is something you only see on the big bikes. Produces an awesome amount of power. You find that there's even in the bottom range, you know, like the 3,000, 5,000, 6,000 RPMs, it's got an awful lot of grunt. And then just when you thought that this is amazing, the bike comes alive and pulls really hard right up to the red line.
It's impressive from about 3,000 or so. You roll on that throttle and it goes. And it doesn't feel like your typical 4-cylinder characteristics, I suppose, because it's such a large engine. You know, it's got a lot of grunt. And that grunt, it carries on through the range. It doesn't, it seems to have about an equal and impressive amount of torque right from 2,500, you know, through to darn near red line. The brakes, actually, for a machine of this size, it will stop very quickly. I was impressed with the brakes. Amazing feel. It's quick to come into a stoppie. You know, you can lift up the rear end without much effort. And considering the length of the machine, I was surprised at that. But 6-piston calipers at the front and lots and lots of power. Good feedback from them as well.
The motorcycle is incredibly long for a sport bike. It's, I guess, when you're talking about the rake and trail, rake being the angle of the forks, the trail being the distance from the wheels. And this has a really long trail, which gives it a lot of high-speed stability, which is kind of what you want in a super fast sport bike. It absorbs bumps amazing. I mean, we have inverted front shocks in the front end. You know, it's typical Suzuki monoshock in the rear end, and it didn't seem like there was any problem with the rigidity of the frame. Like it seemed like a really sweet bike in a straight line.
I'm the kind of guy that could put 1,200 kilometers on in a day on something like a CBR 900. So, you know, to me, it actually feels a little bit conservative. I think the closest thing, or you have to compare it to, because everyone's going to do it, to Honda's CBR 1100. And it is more aggressive than the XX. The seat was amazingly low on the bike. As I stand next to it, the bike seems so low down to the ground compared to especially the XX. The handlebars are a little bit further down as well, a little bit more aggressive riding position, but it's quite comfortable, you know, for some time. One of the things I love about the riding position is the foot pegs. The foot peg placement seems just about perfect for me, and they feel so close together. You can get your feet, it feels like you click your heels together when you're tucked in, and obviously that's for tucking in at speed. But I liked it. I didn't get too much of a wind blast. I heard some people complaining about wind blast over the windshield, but it's what you'd expect at speed. It's a very, very steep rake on the windscreen, and not an awful lot of noise either. So I think you could spend all day on this bike quite easily.
It wasn't as intense as I thought it would be. The motorcycles like the R1, the CBR900 have a really intense feel to it. And I think Suzuki have taken a little bit of the bottom end edge off of this motorcycle by doing things like giving it a really long trail, just toning it down just a little bit, making it a little more rideable. And by doing that, I mean, they're building a rocket ship here. They're doing straight line 300km/h motorcycles. And so in that sense, it does what it's built to do, and it does it with a lot of class. Unfortunately, there's almost nowhere in the country you can go 300km/h. So the number of times your speedometer is going to see that speed will be limited to the number of times you can get on a pretty wide open track. But other than that, it's got to be one of the favorite motorcycles that I've had the opportunity to ride in 1999. Beautiful, beautiful bike.